Hogwarts Castle, a 5-inch gauge locomotive. This is part 33, the important part, drilling the holes in the valence and the main riveting operation. The valences on this locomotive are made from steel. I would normally make them from brass angle because it's a lot easier to work and drill. So I'm being very careful not to foul up on this one, because the valence is much thicker than the thin sheet metal that the running boards are made from. Don't forget that this is only a 1/16 of an inch diameter drill and it will break very easily. I was seriously thinking about breaking a drill in the work to show how to get out of the problem. But then I thought about the viewer who took the time to write in and tell me that doing things wrong on a tutorial video was asinine. At which point I ran into problems, and I'm not doing this on purpose. The drill started to break up in the hole. Oh dear, a major problem. I removed the drill from the chuck and had a look at it, and as you can see, it's definitely broken. And the broken part is left in the work. And here is how I got out of it. I use this method frequently for removing broken taps. This is a centre punch. So don't bother writing in to tell me how to do it. I do it like this. This is how I do it. This is not how some people do it, but this is definitely the way that I do it. This automatic centre punch soon makes short work of the drill bit. Time to use a small hammer on the end of the scriber. And in a very similar manner to the way a worm emerges from a wormhole, although without the ultraviolence, here is the drill bit sticking out of the hole, and I can just lift it out with a pair of forceps. After I removed the broken part, I replaced the 1-inch diameter twist drill in the chuck with a new one. Then I drilled the holes in the valence all the way down the running board until I got to this part. The drilling machine's drill chuck was too big and it was fouling the superstructure, so I fitted the twist drill into my Proxxon motor tool, but this wasn't really very good. It was going to take far too long, and I didn't think my lifespan was long enough. It drilled through the end part because there's no valence there. I persevered for a while and then I ran out of patience, so I thought it's going to be quicker to remove the piece of superstructure and refit it at a later date. For this, I fitted a coarse burr into the chuck of the motor tool and ground away the ends of the rivets that were holding the part in place. These kind of burrs are really useful tools to fit into a rotary tool, and they're suitable for a variety of jobs, from moving the positions of holes to grinding away rivets, as you see here. And in no time at all I could remove the part, and I'm glad that I did really, because underneath it was quite a lot of grime and rust which I'm cleaning off with a needle file. And now the part you've been waiting for. This is a rivet. In fact, it is a 1/16 rivet, and I have a problem. I do not have a rivet snap this size. Blackgates Engineering is 50 miles away and it's Saturday. As necessity is the mother of invention, I had no choice but to make one of my own. Quite a simple job. A rivet snap does two things. It preserves the shape of a rivet head, and also it can form a rivet head on just the plain shank at the other side. I don't need to do that in this case. This is how I made it. I put a piece of round bar into the 3-jaw chuck in my lathe, and I drilled the end with a centre drill like this. Not very deep, just a small depression. And then I used a round burr that I have. I normally use this in the Proxxon motor tool. This time though it was in the tailstock chuck of the lathe, and it made a perfect concave shape in the end of the bar. After this I tapered the rivet snap so it wasn't big and bulky. That's one job done. The next job is to make this. This is just a piece of square bar that's square at each end. When riveting, don't use one of these. This is not for riveting. This hammer is much smaller and it's called a ball peen hammer because it has a ball on the end of it and it's perfect for riveting. So it's time to start. I've tipped some rivets out into one of my plastic boxes. With the rivet snap firmly clamped in the vice jaws, here we go. You can see what the problem is. It's impossible to use the hammer because the rivet shaft is too close to the edge of the valence. And that's why I'm using the square bar, to transmit the hammer blows into the correct place. Before riveting, always make sure that the rivet head is square on the top of the rivet snap. These are only brass rivets and you don't need to put a lot of power into the hammer blow. Even if there were small iron rivets, you still wouldn't need to hit them very hard. It's very important, however, to keep this piece of square bar firmly held against the valence as you hit it with the hammer. This is wrong, by the way. Then what's probably going to happen is the rivet will move out of position, and this is not a good look. If it's like this, remove the rivet and start again. The rear end of this valence is very different to the rest of it. It curves outwards. The parts have been welded together and it's too thick to take a rivet, so I don't have a choice. I'm using a full-size rivet and some Loctite 603. This rivet is going nowhere once the 603 is cured. The next rivet is in the exact position where the valence curves away. I don't want any part of it to be visible, so I just chop down a rivet with a small pair of side cutters. Then I clean up the end of it using the 1-inch belt sander, apply some Loctite and tap it into the hole very gently. The very end hole went nowhere. It was just a hole through the running board. And this was riveted to the running board using a different technique which I'm about to describe as I show you what I did with the front part. And speaking of the front part, here it is. And it's really easy to get this wrong, so I always suggest that you do what I'm about to show you. Right on the part, which is the underside, because what I'm going to do is countersink all of the holes on the underside and then hammer a rivet into the countersink. And to countersink the holes, I'm not using a countersink. I'm using a twist drill. This one is 9/64 of an inch in diameter, and I have the depth stop set so it can't go any further than just the countersink. If I didn't do it this way, it could grab and go all the way through, and that's not something I want to happen. And as I countersink all these holes, I'm reassured that I'm countersinking the correct side, because written on this side is the word underside that you saw me write earlier. You will notice that I'm not going to countersink the 3 holes that will hold the bracket in place, because these 3 holes are to take 3 bolts in order to fasten this removable part in place. Now it's time to shorten some rivets, not the most interesting job in the world. I need 10 of these. I'm just using a small pair of side cutters. I'm not going to bother cleaning them up because the hammer will do that when they're in place. This part of the job is more of an art than the science. You have to persuade the rivet to go into the right place by gently moving the position of the hammer. I suggest you try it on a piece of scrap metal before you do it. It's not as easy as it looks. With a bit of practice you can accurately position the rivet right in the centre of the countersink. And it also takes practice to not smash the hammer into the piece of steel that you're riveting and bending it. The video is of course speeded up just to get through it. I'm making minute changes in the angle of the hammer relative to the rivet to make it go where I want it to go. In the outer part of the workshop now, again this takes some practice, so try it on a piece of scrap first. All I'm doing is removing the surplus copper from underneath the plate, and after a while it looks like this, perfectly smooth and perfectly flat. And this is what you need to aim for, no distortion of the rivet head and a nice flat surface underneath. That way when you put it in position, not only does it match the rest of the running board, well, it looks good, and it sits very flat on the valence. Here's the nearly finished product. The large bolts will be removed and replaced with countersunk bolts, which then in turn will be filled, and they'll be invisible when the running boards are painted. And that's it. Just before I go though, one more thing. You may have noticed if you watch full-size riveting that this is done hot, the rivets are red hot, but that's the full size and it's not necessary in model sizes. The main reason for getting full-size rivets red hot is so that as they cool, they hold the plates together more securely. And also it makes it easier to form the rivet head because the metal is softer when it's red hot. That's it for this one. Thanks for watching and I hope you found it useful. Please take the time to visit my Mainsteam Models website. Click on the section of the website that says Video Playlists. And by doing that you will find it very easy to find other videos that you may like to watch.